Hello everybody and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. Lots of great news, interesting news, I won't call it great news, to share with you today. Just a couple of reminders. Tuesdays at Wellness Farm Health, stop in and see us. We have cooking classes and we show movies and have discussions and potlucks and all kinds of things going on, so please come in. We also have fresh food in the deli case every day. We make some fabulous food here, all vegan, organic, etc. So stop in and see us. Healthcare professionals or people who want to be healthcare professionals, if you're looking for a career change, send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. And don't forget, we are having a live and in-person conference in Columbus, and some information is posted online. I know some of you guys ask me, what's the agenda? And I just have to tell you, it's a little busy around here, and it's hard for me to worry about who's speaking after lunch in the middle of November when we have deadlines for lawsuits and all kinds of other things going on that just have to be done. One last thing, our book, COVID Operation, is going to be out at the end of this month. Shane Pryor and I wrote this book together, a marvelous co-author. I'm very lucky to have had him to work with to write this book. He has a lot of great expertise in so much of what this is all about. So stay tuned for information. As soon as you can pre-order, I'll let you know, but coming very, very soon. All right, so this information I got, you guys send me such great stuff, and then if I can verify it, you know, I go on ahead and put it out. So the Australian website, the Australian Public Health website actually has this. It's information for health professionals about testing for COVID-19. So I'm just going to read you pieces of it. If you want to go read the whole thing online, it's all very interesting. But it says, the reliability of COVID-19 tests is uncertain due to the limited evidence base. Available evidence mainly comes from symptomatic patients, and their clinical role in detecting asymptomatic carriers is unclear. So the information covers the different types of testing, starting with nucleic acid PCR tests. Reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction PCR tests detect SARS-CoV-2 nucleic acid RNA. The extent to which a positive PCR result correlates with the infectious state of an individual is still being determined. Well, we sure do take a lot of actions based on this, don't we? Rapid antigen tests intended for use at the point of care detect the presence of viral protein from SARS-CoV-2 and may be used in the diagnosis of SARS-CoV-2 infection in a symptomatic patient. While rapid antigen tests can provide a result within 15 to 30 minutes, they're generally considered to be less sensitive than a PCR test, which is currently the gold standard. Now, the gold standard says, the extent to which a positive PCR test correlates with the infectious state of an individual is still being determined. Yet to be determined, but it is the gold standard, so we're going to compare everything else to this. This is life in COVID land. In conjunction with clinical findings, a positive result is generally considered to be accurate. However, further testing by PCR may be required in some cases. A negative result in a symptomatic patient would require further confirmatory testing. So the clinical utility of rapid antigen tests in screening asymptomatic persons has not been established. All this to say, PCR, the extent to which it correlates with the infectious state, still being determined. Rapid antigen tests, the clinical utility in screening asymptomatic persons, not been established. And then serology antibody tests. Point-of-care serology tests are intended to detect IgG and/or IgM antibodies to SARS-CoV-2 from venous or finger prick blood samples that are placed on a test strip. Human coronaviruses circulate frequently every year and cause a common cold-type illness. Cross-reaction with antibodies formed by current and past exposure to seasonal human coronavirus infections can cause false positive results. Serology tests can also fail to detect COVID-19 if testing is performed in the acute phase of the infection prior to the development of detectable antibodies. Now, here's the bottom line. It is not yet evident that the detection of antibodies reflects the presence of protective immunity, so the detection of antibodies may not exclude remaining infectivity in a patient. All right, so nothing definitive there. And then COVID-19 test performance summary. COVID-19 is an emerging viral infectious disease. There is limited evidence available to assess the accuracy and clinical utility of available COVID-19 tests. Okay, well, I give credit, honesty. I've always said honesty is the best policy. The Australian government probably does the best job of just putting it out there. We have no idea. This stuff may or may not have any usefulness at all. But I want to now pivot to what happens as a result of all of this testing. All right, Maverick Stowe, 17, is protesting the coronavirus regulations in place at William Floyd High School in Mastic, New York. The teen was being held at the 7th precinct. He was arrested, all right? The school district said on Thursday the high school will be virtual for the foreseeable future for all 3,000 students if Stowe returns to school. Mr. Stowe continues to display irresponsible and selfish behavior with today's latest publicity stunt, the school district said. He arrived wearing a neon green shirt for high visibility with a contingent of media just outside the fence line trying to capture him getting arrested as he entered the building. He did it on purpose. Despite his suspension, Stowe returned to William Floyd High School on Wednesday, prompting a police response. Maverick showed up to the school again this morning. So the bottom line is that all of this testing and all this kind of stuff, all this testing that's so unreliable, this is, and you come up with all these cases. The cases are why we can't have school. And so a 17-year-old who kind of gets it says, this is ridiculous, I'm going to go to school anyway, and they arrest him. Because arresting 17-year-olds for going to school, that is some good public policy. So anyway, the parents show their support. I show my support. This is just ridiculous. And maybe if enough of this kind of stuff gets out, people will start to pay attention. Quebec City. Authorities in Quebec City, Canada have announced they will isolate uncooperative citizens in a coronavirus facility, the location of which remains a secret. There is nothing like having a family member taken to someplace and you don't know where it is. During a press conference, Dr. Jacques Girard, who heads the Quebec City Public Health Authority, drew attention to a case where patrons at a bar were ordered to wait until their COVID-19 inaccurate tests came back, but disregarded the command, thinking they lived in a free country. Who thinks that? And left the premises before the results came back positive, using the inaccurate test that we don't know much about. And so we may isolate somebody for 14 days, Gerard said, and it is what we did this morning. We forced a person to cooperate with the investigation, and police cooperation was exceptional. I'll tell you what, calling the police to act on tests that we have no idea how valid they are is always a great idea. The health official then outlined how the state is also tracking down people for violating their home quarantine and forcibly removing them to the secret facility. Because we've had people isolated at home and then we saw the person was not at home, so we went to their home and we told them, we're isolating you where we want you to be. 6 other Quebec City bars known to have been frequented by regulars are now being examined by public health officials. It should be noted that it is not being claimed that anybody is actually sick from the coronavirus, but the state has the power to force a citizen into isolation anyway. This is just ridiculous. You've got, and by the way, go to the Centers for Disease Control website. Very important to get information from government sources like the Australian equivalent of Centers for Disease Control. You should look at what the Centers for Disease Control in the United States says and the Centers for Disease Control equivalent in Canada says about the reliability of the test. But if you don't do what they say, we're going to take you to a secret facility. Now here's what Houston is doing. The City of Houston, Texas has announced a new program that will randomly select Houston residents who will be visited at their homes by city officials and paramedics and asked to fill out questionnaires and then get a blood draw. So if you happen to be home when they stop by, my advice is slam the door in their face. I have some other ideas about what I might do too if they show up at my house, but we'll save that for a different time. Most health officials, if you ask them, they do the same thing that our emperor does. They say, oh, it's no big deal, you be contributing to science. And the Houston mayor, by the way, says, if we knock on your door, I strongly encourage you and your loved ones to participate in this important survey. So the first thing is they're all going to show up and they're going to wear these t-shirts that say better together. That's part of the whole, indoctrination training kind of thing. We're not in this together. Is anything I'm talking about this week indicating we're in this together? No, we're not in this together. We're in this together as suffering citizens, but we're not in this together with public health authorities who are taking people to secret isolation facilities based on inaccurate tests, right? The City of Houston is partnering with the Centers for Disease Control, Rice University, and Baylor College And the Houston Health Department then says, if you do the blood draw test, it doesn't replace the nasal swab viral the oral or nasal swab viral testing. Well, the reason why they have to keep doing more and more tests is because none of them are very reliable. So the bottom line, here's what is in the announcement. I'll just read it to you. This is an exciting development. Our partners with the CDC, Baylor College of Medicine, Rice University, and this health department are going to be embarking on a trial where we're going to be in advance randomly selecting addresses across the city. We will be visiting these residents and asking people to participate in the trial. When your home should be selected, if your home is selected, a team consisting of a Houston Health Department employee wearing a Better Together t-shirt along with a paramedic from the Houston Fire Department will arrive and explain to you that you are one of the ones. Your home is one of the ones that was randomly selected to participate in the program. If that should occur, what you should expect is a simple questionnaire to be filled out, and we would ask that for every member of the household. It's not difficult, it's pretty straightforward questions, and they assure you they don't want social security numbers or anything like that. If you've been exposed to anyone that you know has had COVID, all right, things along those lines, medical, COVID-related questions, we'll then ask if we can obtain a blood sample. So you know what they're going to do. They're going to ask you in Houston who you've been around so they can contact trace and go to other people. And you'll be real popular with your friends then, because then they can isolate them. And of course, why do you think these states are building these facilities where they get reimbursements from the feds? Do you think that they're just there for decoration? Think again. And then I'll finish with this. It's just the ridiculous, it's like life in COVID land, the never-ending nonsense ranging from, you didn't stay home like we told you to. Nobody's saying you're sick, but you have to go to isolation camp anyway. A Canadian flight was canceled and police were called because a child was not wearing a mask. So here's the story. Safwan Chowdhury says WestJet wanted his 19-month-old to wear a mask, but the baby girl would not stop crying. I imagine so. The airline says the issue was not with the infant, who's below the age required to wear a mask, but with Mr. Chowdhury's 3-year-old. Tuesday morning's flight from Calgary to Toronto was stopped and all passengers had to disembark. It's unlike anything I've ever witnessed, let alone experienced, Mr. Chowdhury told the BBC. He said his oldest daughter, who is 3, was eating a snack before takeoff when flight attendants approached them, asking both their children wear a mask. He said he and his wife both were wearing a mask. He asked if his daughter could finish her snack, but they said that they had a zero-tolerance policy and would not close the plane door without wearing a mask. Because you know what? When you let a 3-year-old finish her snack, that's really dangerous. Mr. Chowdhury said he agreed to put one on immediately. Most children, you kind of have to ease them into it. Yeah, when you put masks on little children, they don't understand what the hell's going on. You do have to ease them into it. He said that the 3-year-old did put on the mask after some fussing, but the younger one had a very difficult time. She was hysterical, and then she was so upset she vomited. He says WestJet was aggressive and told them that because his youngest daughter was not wearing a mask and was too upset to wear a mask, the whole family would have to leave. And then if they didn't leave, they could be arrested, charged, and receive prison time. Mr. Chowdhury said he and his wife were respectful. They agreed to leave. And then after that, they just disembarked the whole plane and canceled the flight and moved it to the next day. Now, WestJet disputes that the child that was 3 had a mask on. The airline said, due to non-compliance of the parents to place a mask on their older child who is over the age of 2, our crew informed the adults of the regulations we're required to follow. Our crew requested the presence of authorities after the guests refused to comply with Transport Canada's interim order and subsequently refused to deplane the aircraft. A video taken with Mr. Chowdhury's phone shows his older daughter wearing a mask on the plane after police arrived on board. He says some passengers were very irritated with his family. Overwhelmingly, people on the plane supported them. Many spoke up in defense of the family as their youngest cried, he said. That was when the flight staff called police. They got off the plane, and the plane was eventually canceled and booked for the next day. So the bottom line is the passengers can be heard in the video of the incident heckling the police and air crew. The officer later confirms that when he arrived, the oldest child was wearing a mask and no charges were filed. I'm sure the police don't like being called into this kind of thing, but what the heck is going on in our country, people? Or all of our countries where this is okay? And look at what the government has done. Look at what the government, you've got a little child screaming hysterically about putting a mask on. And people are so intent on following the rules. All compassion is gone. I'm the crazy one? I'm the person who's dangerous? Don't you think this is dangerous? Don't you think that what I'm talking about is dangerous? And I want to come back to what I started with. The reliability of COVID-19 tests is uncertain due to the limited evidence base. All of this is based on the hysteria about cases ginned up by these unreliable tests. Stop the nonsense, people. We're trying to do it in court. We're trying to do it every way we can. We're trying to do it through Make Americans Free Again. I don't know. Every time I think I've seen the worst of humanity in this whole thing, I see something else that's just as awful. So that's it for today. My email address is pampopper@msn.com. Go to makeamericansfreeagain.com, enter your name, become part of our group, support what we're doing, not with money. There's no donate button. Keep giving your money to the organizations you belong to. If you like what we're doing, buy something from my company, WellnessForumHealth.com. Call us, 614-841-7700. That's how you can support us. We don't expect any donations and that sort of thing. Let's take our country back. Let's take our lives back. And let's take the lives of our children more seriously. Can you imagine the thoughts that these kids are going to have as they grow up who were involved in this incident? All right, that's it. Back to you tomorrow with more news.